Welcome back into the record player, everybody. I'm still Scott, and I am absolutely thrilled today to be joined by an award-winning singer, songwriter, artist, and activist. She dominated radios in the 90s with hits like As I Lay Me Down and Damn, I Wish I Was Your Lover. She will be touring through Canada and the US this fall, while also we get her new record, Reimagining Whaler, a reimagining of her hit record, Whaler, coming in October. We'll talk about all these things and maybe even more. When I woke up this morning, I thought, damn, I wish I was interviewing Sophie B. Hawkins today. And boom, here we are. Welcome to the record player, Sophie.
That's awesome. Thank you.
um, I appreciate you spending time with us today. I know you're doing a lot of press and stuff for the upcoming things, so thank you so much for
You're
giving
welcome.
your
And
time.
I like that when you said I woke up this morning, damn, I wish I was interviewing Sophie, because I do remember when we were making Damn, I Wish I Was Your Lover, making Tongues and Tales in the studio, me and Rick Chertoff was the producer. I remember talking with Rick. We want it to be when the song comes on in the morning, it's like it doesn't shock you awake, but it sort of gently puts you into a whole new world, and you go, "What just happened?"
Well,
And
it
then
does.
he said he had the experience of being in a hotel room, and Damn, I Wish I Was Your Lover was the first song that came on his radio when the alarm, you used to be able to set your alarm and the radio would come on. And he said it was an incredible experience. So you just brought me back there.
Well, happy to do that. Um, you've been you're home now, I can see, but you've been in the UK. You played at Glastonbury and Milton Keynes. I mean, there's a couple of pretty big venues that pretty awesome,
Beautiful.
iconic venues, really.
Yes. And
Iconic.
iconic part of the world where so much is going on all the time. But I think that and you didn't ask me this question, but one reason why I do love going back to the UK is because there's a spirituality in and among the people. And I think it's based on humanity for so many thousands of years, um, acting out their beliefs and, evolving mentally and creatively. And it's just there. And the people, they're more open than America. The men are more supple. They're more embracing of ideas. They're more confident in their wholeness. So it's really great for me to go back because they know every lyric, they care about the lyrics, and it's sort of a spiritual experience for me.
Well, we're glad to have you back. We're in Canada. You're in the States, I know, so you're not back
Yes,
here
Halifax.
yet.
You in Halifax?
Us? No, we're in Ontario, just outside Toronto.
Okay, something said Halifax. It must have been a different thing. Sorry.
You arrived on our radios during a time where music was kind of in a bit of a weird place. Um, gr New rock and grunge was replacing hair metal at the time. Like Nirvana and Soundgarden and Pearl Jam were coming in and replacing like the Poisons and Motley Crues of the world. Boy bands were replacing rock bands. Um, on the other hand, there was this female-driven kind of swoon that was coming in. I call it the even though it was a little bit before that, I call it the Lilith Fair era, where people like our own Sarah McLachlan, Tori Amos, yourself, Suzanne Vega, the list goes on and on. Jane Sibrey, Annie Lennox. Um,
Why didn't you say your own Jane Siberry? Isn't she
our
great?
own Jane Sibrey, yes, sorry.
There you go. And I love her so much. So you have to say our own Jane Siberry.
She's wonderful. We've had her on the show, and she is fantastic.
Yes.
What was it like for you during that time to be in such a unique time with such a talented group of people, group of women, especially?
I felt right at home in the universe, in where I was. I had started as an African drummer when I was 14 years old. Music has been a long and hard road since the very first step to become a musician and be in the African music world and then be in the male percussion world. I went to Manhattan School of Music for percussion, and I was Brian Ferry's percussionist and until I got fired. And then I was happy I got fired because I was young and I could focus on my songwriting, which I did. But how did I feel? I felt, right at the right place at the right time. Really, I felt my album, I love my songs. I love working on them. I love writing them. I love recording my demos. I loved being in the studio and being sort of, I'm going to just say it, the boss, because I had been a woman among men my whole musical life. and I had been a student. And now I knew exactly what I was doing more than so many people around me. And I wasn't cocky. I was confident that this is what my music needs. I need to hire Omar Hakim, only Omar Hakim, and Mark Egan, only Mark Egan. That was unusual. These are jazz cats that I hired for my pop record. So I was in my element. I was working with people that I had always wanted to work with as a musician. And now I was hiring them as just being the singer-songwriter. And I felt like, and I was in Manhattan where I grew up, and I felt everybody who grows up in Manhattan feels incredibly confident about that. You know, it wears off. But when you're young, you're like, I grew up here. I'm part, you know, the very few people who grew up here. So there was that. It was all good. And and I had been raised on Sarah McLachlan. She came out before me, by the way, and I used to pay money to see her play. And she was very influential to me because not only her songs, which I love, and her voice, which I love, but when I saw her on stage, she's a great musician, and her talking with the audience, her in between, they call it patter, but it was very meaningful. She talked about her mother. And so I watched her and I thought, wow, I want to be like her. She's got it all. You know, she's got it all. And then Tracy Chapman was already out.
Yeah.
She was a huge hit. So I was inspired while I was making Tongues and Tales to be as good as Tracy Chapman and Sarah McLachlan and Jane Siberry. And then I didn't really know of Tori Amos that much because we came out really at the same time.
Mhm.
But I'll tell you something beautiful about her. I was doing a show in Chicago at the old Vic, and somebody passed me a note handwritten by Tori Amos, who was way more famous than me at the time. She wrote, you know, we're compared a lot in the press. I'm paraphrasing. We're compared a lot in the press, but we should be celebrated and supported as equals because I love your music. And, you know, and it was just like, wow. So that's how it was. It was great.
There seemed to be a lot of camaraderie at that time between all you female artists, right?
There was. I was also, though, something I don't understand happened. There was camaraderie, and you mentioned Lilith there, and I wasn't invited on Lilith there, and I was very sad about that. I was literally sad, and I didn't understand why I wasn't considered part of that group. But whatever, maybe it was business. Who knows?
I want to talk about we'll talk about the upcoming tour and the album and everything. I want to go back and talk about I was working in a record store when Tongues and Tales came out, and the PR guy came in and gave us this record and said, "Play this, you're going to love it." And after that moment, it very rarely did it ever come off the CD player in the store.
Wow.
It was fantastic, and I mean I can go through that record and probably pick out five, six, seven songs that could have been a single. Um,
Yeah.
a few weeks later, "Damn, I Wish I Was Your Lover" is like all over the radio.
Hmm.
People are asking for the album. Whose idea was it as a young artist with your debut album? Whose idea is it at that point in time to release the first single? Like, what song gets picked by? Is it by you or is it by the record company?
It isn't by me. It was definitely the record company had. Well, I made the record, as I said, with Rick Chertoff. Mainly, it was our minds were melded. He was the head of A&R at Sony.
Hmm.
And that was a smart decision I made at that time to go with Sony because I had a choice. But I really did mentally, me and Rick were aligned. And I thought he's the head of A&R and he wants to be the producer. This could only help, you know? So that was smart. And we knew that they would probably want Damn I Wish I Was Your Lover to be the single. There was a tremendous amount of pressure on that song, but we also wanted to keep open and have 4 or 5 singles, as you said. These songs came from the demos. Before I Walk on Fire is the demo. And then we just overdubbed. Damn I Wish I Was Your Lover are the keyboards from the demo. I did re-sing the vocal, but what you're hearing on Tongues and Tales are my home demos added to, sometimes re-recorded, but everything essential taken from the demo. So we had that to go on. It wasn't like, what would this sound like if? We knew what it sounded like. I was signed, and the reason why 7 labels wanted to sign me when they did, and believe me, none of them wanted to sign me 1 month before they all did. But when they heard Damn I Wish I Was Your Lover, the home demo, they all wanted to sign me. So there was pressure on that song, again, even before I was signed. But what we were hoping was that it wouldn't be the first Pressureful song because we thought it would be the biggest and it would be great to lead up to it. But that's not what Sony decided. They decided to make Damn. And then here's the thing about it. It was so big that we couldn't get another single. There was no time or room or no more money. I don't know what it was, but they couldn't get another single away. And it would have been wonderful because it would have given me also time to, just more time. But
Mhm.
then I had to go in really quickly to make the second album, oh, which they sent me to Europe for, which was good, but it was all too crunched. Everybody should have been a little more relaxed.
Um, but that, I mean, you hit a certain point of damn, I wish I was your lover there, where
Yes,
you got the video got banned on MTV for God's sakes, which
yes, yes.
that's a pretty exclusive club of fame,
And
but
do you know why?
no. Well, I mean,
Oh,
I was a 22-year-old boy at the time, so to me, it was great song, pretty girl, and sexy video, I guess. But I didn't
yes.
understand why.
Well, I just learned why. That's why I asked you. I always thought it was because they thought I was weird in the video,
Hmm.
but it's apparently because there's a scene where me and this amazing black dancer are doing this walk with our fingers of each other's faces, which was a something that he was on the downtown scene, and I will remember his name by the end of this call, and I'm mad at myself that I'm not saying his name right away. I just don't want to say the wrong name. So I sort of plucked out all those downtown dancers that are in that video. They were from the real scene, PS 87 in Manhattan, in the East Village. I put them in the video, and we had that scene together. We were walking across each other's faces, and they didn't. And in the South of the United States, the southern part, they didn't want me touching a black man, and they didn't want a black man touching me. Isn't that shocking? In
Unbelievable.
1992, when Madonna is dancing in front of a burning cross,
Yeah,
they're banning my video.
unreal,
Isn't
unreal.
that shocking?
It's yeah. I mean, there seems to me to be so many other things that they could have focused on rather.
Right. And it was so creative. I mean, what we were doing was this beautiful, like this walking across each other's face with fingers. It wasn't, it's not even really sexual. It's more, I don't know what it is. It's a move. I don't know. Anyway, so there you go.
That's crazy. You covered Dylan on that record.
Yes.
The who were your influences? I mean, obviously Dylan, but I mean, when you were growing up and coming into the music and learning your instruments and actually becoming a musician, who was your influences? Who were you listening to?
So that's a great question because the point where I started learning African drums, when I said I have to play African drums, that was my first instrument. I was 14 years old. And then I broke from my influences, which were British rock, like Bowie, very heavily Bowie. But of course, the Stones. And as you said, Dylan, I grew up listening to Dylan. That was my father's favorite artist. And my mother would play Handel's Messiah and Beethoven and Duruflé and all the beautiful classical. My mother loved Joan Baez. So I basically heard it all. I heard from my father, Billie Holiday, Bob Dylan, all the big bands. And from my mother, I heard all the classical and all the British rock. And that actually, those categories go together for me. And then, but when I started playing African drums, don't ask me why I said that I wanted to play that instrument. I don't know why. It was from my unconscious. Then my teacher, my African drum teacher, who I found through my aunt in Manhattan, really trashed my influences and got me to start listening to Olatunji and Max Roach and other, other artists that I hadn't listened to before. So, because he wanted me to be educated, Paulino da Costa, he really wanted me to understand where music really comes from. In his mind, it really comes from Africa and Brazil, and this is what you're going to listen to 24/7. So then that was when I was learning to play. It was all African and Brazilian. I had to cut everything else out because my drum teacher said they were a bad influence.
Uh, the getting to play the Dylan tribute concert too. I mean, that was incredible.
It was incredible. And Sony left me off the. It's funny. Every great thing you say, I have a bittersweet story. And then Sony took me off the album.
Which, yeah, I remember that happening, and I never quite understood it because I remember
Nobody
watching
understands it. Again, these mystifying decisions. Who knows?
it. Unreal.
Because it's still of my fans' favorite things that I've ever done. When people stop me on the street to this day, that's what they talk about. That performance. I met an artistic director from a big theater the other day, and he said I changed his life with that performance. So why was that left off the record? I don't know.
Yeah, that was never made any sense to us. Trust me. Whaler was such a huge record here especially here in Canada. I think for some reason your Canadian fan base is gigantic and was at the time.
Yay.
I think still is. The Whaler was such a massive record here. It's so hard to believe it's been 30 years, first of all, but it's also so hard to believe in my mind. How can she come out and try to make this record better? How do you make something that was that good better or different? Maybe you're not trying to make it better, you're trying to make it different. Um, it's such a beautifully written record. How do you go back and say, I should have done this or I wanted to try this and now's the time?
I love the question. It seems in two parts to me because the answer of why I did it is in your question. I wanted the writing. Everything with me comes back to the songwriting. Everything. So the writing of Whaler is so ironclad beautiful. It's so romantic. It's so pure. It's so spiritual, really. And I wanted to re-experience that part of my, I literally wrote in my journal, I want to re-experience that Sophie, that person writing those songs. And so I approached it as going back into myself at the time as a songwriter. I remembered the songs coming out. I always remember, even if I get dementia, I bet you all remember writing my songs because I never forget where and when I wrote a song and how it came out. And then I have the journals to back it up, you know? So I wanted to go back into that beautiful, romantically pure spiritual state of the songs of Waylon. And that was very healing for me in this day and age. So we made it, what did we make it, a year and a half ago? And I talked with several people. It wasn't my idea to do the album, by the way. This was a very smart person, my friend Sherry Lunn. She said, you know what you should do? You should make Whaler on the road, rehearse it in front of your audience, then go in and record it in 2 days, spend no money on it, and release it on your own to finally make money on your record, Sophie. And she was right. And so I said to the people, Wally and my musician I was working with at the time, Seth, I said, Seth, would you be willing to just rehearse this in front of an audience, just me and you, a duo, and I'll book the gigs and we'll rehearse 20 shows. We'll do everything in front of an audience. We'll pre-sell the album. Then we'll go in and make the record, and that in 2 days. And he said, absolutely. Sounds fun. That's what we did. We
The,
didn't pre-sell the album, but that's what we did.
well, I can't
And then
wait.
I got a release. So that was good.
I can't
But
wait
I
to
have
hear
to
it.
tell you, oh, go on.
And I was just going to say it's October, right? That it's supposed to be coming.
Yes, and we made it. We made yes, and October seems like the date that I recorded it. Well, I did it in the summer, so it's a year and a half ago. It was an amazing experience to do these songs live with a duo. Me and Seth playing all the instruments. We rehearsed maybe twice, and we went on the road and we did it in front of the audience, and it was so exciting. And then when you rehearse the songs and then you go into a studio, you're so alive. There's no self-consciousness. You feel I've done this, I can do it. And so we just did that. We tracked it live. And it's beautiful. I love particularly of the whaler reemerging, which is what it's called, because I have the image of the whale reemerging from the sea. The vocals are beautiful, and people will tell that's Sophie live. It's different than Sophie in the studio. It's got the same richness and everything, but there's a certain reaching through that I love that comes out in Whaler reemerging.
You mentioned taking back your music and that kind of thing,
Yeah.
which is something that obviously in the news the last few years with Taylor Swift doing that, and other bands are starting to re-record their own music to take back
Yes.
their things. Yeah, I mean, you did something way back in the day that sort of like Taylor Swift is doing now. You said you don't like the way I'm recording my music, well, then I don't want to be on your label anymore. And you actually
Yes.
made the move and said, I'll start my own label. And that way I can
Yes.
do my own music. That was very gutsy, but also probably
Yes.
terrifying at the time.
It was terrifying, and I don't know anyone else who did that. I
No.
actually I actually sued to get my master's back
Mhm.
because of the banjo. And because I wanted to keep the banjo on, I had produced the record, and I write all my songs. And they said there's no banjos in pop music. And I knew they were wrong. And boy, were they wrong. Because it wasn't so long after that the Dixie Chicks had a huge hit with the banjo. And this is the curse of my career really has been that I do things a couple of steps before. And doing that, I have to shoulder the burden and usually never get the payoff. But also doing that, there's a beautiful part where I like challenges and I do like to try and see what will happen. And I like to grow that way as a human and as an artist. So I did. I left the label in 1998, started my own record label. It was way harder than I thought it would be. And it's been way harder. And I don't know if I would say to my younger Sophie, you should do this. My older Sophie may say, try for a couple more months to make it work with Sony. But I had tried. I was diplomatic. I did say, do some mixes without the banjo, see what happens. But they weren't interested in that. It was actually a bigger fight. The fight was about Sophie B. Hawkins shouldn't be producing her own records. They actually wanted me to start writing with other people who were unknown. This is what blew my mind. And this was before, so it had been building. I have written platinum records on my own. All my songs, huge hits, classic hits, I wrote them on my own in my bedroom. What's wrong with you people? Why are you making me write with people? What in your lexicon makes you think that I can't achieve success again? And then Lose Your Way, the banjo song, they said, this is your biggest hit, but you got to lose a banjo. I thought, this is just a neurotic twitch that they have. They're trying to take me apart. And I do believe that. I don't think they were rational. And I was saying to them, you're not being rational.
Mm-hmm.
You know, make other mixes, make it better. You can put the banjo on through effects in the background. I don't care, but don't be irrational with my career. And that's basically, I stood up for artists everywhere. And I don't know whether it was the right thing to do, but it's what I did.
And it's amazing to me because Sony, not to, well, trash Sony. There's no such thing as record companies anymore, so I can trash whoever I want. It wasn't just you. I mean, George Michael had sued Sony and
Yes,
tried to
and they
battle.
were mean to him before me. And you're right, that might have affected me because I loved him and I met him and spent time with him while I was making Whaler. And maybe because they were horrible to him. And he lost, I think.
Yeah,
That could be
lost the
why.
case. I
Might have
think he was
fueled my
forced to
fire.
record another record for them after he lost the case.
That's, and again, that could have fueled my fire without me knowing it.
Anyway, I am, like I said, I'm so happy that you had time to join us today. You're coming out with the tour. You're going back on the road. Like I mentioned, you were in the UK. You're coming through Canada. I think I've got the Saskatchewan Jazz Festival, July 11th, in Saskatchewan, Canada, Manitoba. You're coming through. I see a whole bunch of dates in Manitoba and Alberta and British Columbia, but nothing in Ontario. What's going on there? Hopefully that.
Is it 2.5 weeks? There's got to be Ontario.
Well, I don't see any Ontario on my list. Maybe I'm wrong. I'll look a little further because I can't.
There's 2 or 3 days off, which are pissing me off. Maybe Canada is so huge. Maybe I should look at that and mention it to my manager because there is a portion where it doesn't in the middle. I don't know. I'll have to look at the schedule. I might be sending it to you and asking your opinion.
I'm okay with that. Out on the road with Paula Cole. Have you and Paula been friends for a long time? I mean, were you guys friends back in the day, or did you guys just kind of hook up
We
after
weren't
that?
in the day, but since we've done a couple of shows for the last since my daughter was born. Okay, when Esther was 1 year old, we did a show together in the U.S. and I really loved her. And we have we have been on stages together, and we did one double bill about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. It was fantastic, and so this will be our second double bill, and we do get along. We get along really naturally. She's wonderful.
Mhm.
She's a great person and a very caring person, as well as a phenomenal musician and a great songwriter and singer.
During the show, do you guys do your own separate pieces, or do you do stuff together while you're on
I'd
stage?
love to do stuff with her, but she hasn't deigned to say yes yet.
Keep going, keep pushing,
Someday.
keep pushing. We'd like to see it.
Okay, good.
Just before I let you go, I wanted to ask you about you were writing a book, you were writing a memoir. How close are
Still
you?
I am. It's great. I mean, I have also writing a musical, and one will move the other out of the way, and then the other will move. So recently, because I had a reading of the musical, a very public reading,
Mhm.
and in front of 300 people, I had to push the book aside, and I'm very much in. So now, but I always am writing, keeping my notes. I walk around with baskets. The baskets are full of each project, albums, musical, and books, and it works for me actually. I talked about parts before I interview. I have different parts of me, and they function very well together.
Good. Writing a song is one thing because it's coming from a maybe
Yes,
you're not writing it about yourself. You're not maybe it's writing about a different thing that has nothing to do with
yes,
you. Writing a memoir, I mean, that's a whole nother ballgame. That's writing about you.
yes.
I mean,
It is, and on the one hand, it's scary to think about doing it, but there are so many parts of my life, especially the musical from when I started doing music, that I absolutely love. They're just even that Sony story. I can tell it like, that was a rough time, but I loved everything about doing what I was doing.
mhm.
I was always like somebody called me a pirate the other day. Um, and I like that image of me. I do. I like to go out there and see what I can do, see what I can make, and I don't want to conform. It's not about the business for me. And I used to laugh when people said I had a career because I thought if I have a career, anybody can have a career because I seem to do everything to mess it up. But it's about the challenge and the exploration in everything for me. So writing the book, it's fun because I get to tell my side, and my side is full of joy.
Uh, we can tell. I mean, I'm so glad that you're still doing what you're doing because I was a huge fan back in the day, and I'm so glad that you're still out there and doing what you do, and doing other things as well as the music. Whaler re-emerging coming in October, on the road through Canada, hopefully to Toronto. We mentioned that with Paula Cole. Thank you so much for being with us on the record player. I really appreciate you taking your time with us today.
Thank you.